Welcome to the Dale Lolley Show here on the DK Pittsburgh Sports Podcast Network. I am your host, Dale Lolley, and we're going to talk a little Steelers here for the next several minutes here. Steelers getting ready for their third and final preseason game on Sunday. That will be the final preseason game of the entire preseason for the NFL. The Steelers will host the Detroit Lions on Sunday at Acrisure Stadium. And one of the things I wanted to talk about today was something that I found interesting that Mitch Trubisky was talking about the other day about, the scramble drill and getting out of the pocket and, how he wants to, make sure he hits some of those passes down the field. He said, you're just trying to keep plays alive. That's one of the improvements from last week. It's a good thing to keep plays alive, but you got to take advantage when you get behind a defense like that. I would like to hit that one earlier in the game where I've got Deontay Johnson behind the defense. We kind of weren't on the same page from where he was going versus where I was throwing. Those can turn into big plays. Obviously, people in Pittsburgh are quite aware of that. We saw Ben Roethlisberger do that time and time again over the course of his career, at least the early portion of his career, probably the first, 12 or so years. He was one of the best in the business, if not the best in the business of those improvisational plays where, he would shake a guy off and roll out of the pocket. He'd escape pressure and get out of the pocket, always looking downfield. We've seen a little bit of that from Mitch Trubisky thus far for the Steelers. And, I think after a while here, of course, the Steelers haven't had to do that the last few years. Even in 2019, when Roethlisberger was out for most of that season, the quarterbacks were instructed to just get the ball out of your hands, whether that was Mason Rudolph or Devlin Hodges. They weren't running around back there trying to make plays and do those kind of things. That wasn't what the coaching staff wanted. They wanted them to stay on script, get rid of the football, dump it off, get it out quickly. We've seen a lot of that quick stuff from the Steelers here over the last few years. And, if you look at the way Trubisky has escaped some pressure and done some things in this preseason, obviously that was one of the things, that mobility factor was one of the things the Steelers really liked about him. And I had a funny exchange today with Pat Freiermuth about that. Here's what Freiermuth had to say about that scramble drill.
No, it just kind of happens. I mean, obviously, when we get to our break point and look back at the quarterback when he's not in the pocket, then we kind of know where to go. We have our certain rules where we're supposed to do on scramble, but I think it's cool having a factor of quarterback being able to mobility and go out their pocket and make some plays.
Didn't have to do it much last year.
No, not at all. Not at all.
That was something that early in Ben's career, he did a lot of, like the first 10 years. That was what Ben did. Is that a nice thing to have, to know when that play breaks down, your quarterback is going to keep it alive and keep his eyes down the field?
For sure. I think it eases kind of a lot of guys, especially if, O-line or tight ends, if you miss a block or two, we can kind of not rely, but have the back of our mind being, okay, maybe our quarterback, he sees it, can step up or get out of the pocket, stuff like that. So I think it helps, and it obviously helps our offense a lot.
What about in terms of as soon as he crosses the line of scrimmage and he's a runner, do you turn that on then and say, okay, I got to block somebody?
Yeah, for sure. Obviously, you don't want our quarterback getting hit, but when he gets out of the pocket, obviously we have to transition to block.
Is that a little different? Or is that...
No, I mean, blocking is blocking. You just got to get it done.
Thanks.
Yep.
So obviously you heard Freiermuth there when I asked him about the mobility factor, and the Steelers just didn't have it the last couple of years, and he kind of said, no, we didn't. And that's not a knock on Ben Roethlisberger. I mean, that's just the reality of the situation, that he wasn't going to run around and keep plays alive like he did earlier in his career. And I'm sure all those guys in that locker room had seen the plays that Ben made early in his career. I mean, they grew up watching the guy. And, there were times last year where, he would shake off a defender and still make a play. He still was Big Ben after all. But he was going to stay in the pocket, and he was going to be in one spot. And maybe he'd move a couple steps to the left or right or try to step up in the pocket. But that really was about it. I mean, when you look at the Steelers' rushing totals from last year, Ben Roethlisberger had 5 rushing yards last season on 20 attempts. Now, obviously, some of those were kneel downs, and he had a long run of 8 yards. I'm going to go out on a limb and say that Mitch Trubisky will have at least an 8-yard run at least one 8-yard run, if not more, in the Steelers' first game on September 11th against the Cincinnati Bengals. That's one of the things he does really well. And that mobility factor is something that, if you've been preparing for the Steelers over the last few years, I don't know that you're going to be quite ready for that coming from the Steelers offense. We've seen a lot of, moving pockets and those kind of things. And that obviously, the mobility factor and the ability to move the pocket are things that can help this offensive line. And I think that's what the Steelers are banking on here. The ability to get the quarterback out of the pocket. He's not in one spot. And then once you hit a couple of those plays, those long, deeper plays, you're going to back the defense off a little bit. So I think that's what the Steelers are looking for here out of their offense as they continue to prepare for this whole thing. But it's probably going to take a little bit of time for the eligible receivers to get on the same page with Trubisky on some of this stuff, because they just haven't had to do it the last few years. Yes, there are keys and things to know, and but there's still some improvisational skills involved in that, throwing to a spot and hoping the receiver sees the same thing. And honestly, that deep play that Trubisky was talking about in the game against the Jaguars, he threw to an open spot, and Johnson probably could have gotten there, but he tripped, about 4 steps away from that pass, and that could have turned into a big one. You do like the fact that the Steelers are trying to push the ball down the field and make those kind of things happen, and that will pay dividends in the long run for that offense, particularly, with Najee Harris running the football, things of that nature. It's going to open up the entire offense. At least that's what the Steelers are hoping. We'll see if that comes to fruition. I'm going to take a break. You're listening to the Dale Lolley Show here on the DK Pittsburgh Sports Podcast Network. I'll be back with more right after this. As I mentioned in the first segment, the Steelers play the Detroit Lions on Sunday in their final preseason game. And the Lions are an interesting opponent because, well, they're not going to play their starting quarterback, Jared Goff, in this game. They're going to start Tim Boyle and follow him with David Blau. Let me say that again. Tim Boyle and David Blau. Do you think Mason Rudolph is a better quarterback than those guys? Because I sure do. And that just goes to show you, I mean, the quarterback position in the NFL, as I said before, I'm not interested in giving Mason Rudolph away. If a team like the Lions comes to me and says, hey, we really need to upgrade here, maybe that's why, you might see a little Mason Rudolph in this game. I don't know if you will or not, given how practice snaps have gone this week. I think, the Steelers are pretty happy with the way all 3 of their quarterbacks have played in this preseason. And, hey, at this point, Mason Rudolph's done everything he could do. And, we'll see if another team comes knocking here. As Rudolph said on Thursday, when asked about his future, he said, it's difficult to say. We've got another week. I'm going to keep doing my job, and I'll hit the field Sunday and compete. And that's all he's done the entire time throughout the process here, as the Steelers have had this quarterback competition. I'm using air quotes when I'm talking about competition because it really hasn't been one. It seems to me like the plan all along has been exactly what has happened. Now, Kenny Pickett's been a big part of that because he has played reasonably well in the opportunities that he's gotten here for the Steelers. I say reasonably well because there have been some rough days in training camp and things of that nature, things you would expect to see from a rookie quarterback. I don't know that Mason Rudolph did anything to lose the number 2 job for the Steelers. I think Kenny Pickett has done everything to win that job. I know there's still stuff out there that Pickett could be the starter for the Steelers in week 1. I don't think that's going to happen. I'd be very surprised at this point if that happened, because everything that the Steelers have done this entire offseason has pointed to Mitch Trubisky being their starter in week 1. Doesn't mean Kenny Pickett won't play at some point this season. I mean, if you look at Mitch Trubisky's background and everything that's happened to him in the course of his career, he's missed some time with injuries. Again, that's kind of something that happens with some of these mobile quarterbacks. You could take some big hits in those situations. It's one of the things that's kind of remarkable about Lamar Jackson is that, he just seems to has a way to not taking those big hits when he's running around like that. But, the odds say that at some point the Steelers are going to need that second quarterback. And, again, that's to me is a reason why I might keep Mason Rudolph around this season. But, you also want to be fair to the player, and the Steelers, well, it's all about building the team. And as I said before, they don't need the cap space unless they make another deal. They've got something else brewing here. So that could be something that you keep an eye on there. And one thing that I threw out there today, one guy I would keep an eye on is the situation in Philadelphia where Andre Dillard, a former first-round draft pick, a guy who's started some games in this league at left tackle, could be on the trading block. We'll see. Obviously, the Steelers have some connection there with the assistant general manager, Andy Weidel, was part of the draft process when the Eagles drafted Dillard with the 22nd pick in 2019. He's a true left tackle. And let's face it, I mean, Dan Moore hasn't exactly lit the world on fire here the first couple of preseason games. So that would be something that might interest me. And that would be something that, I could see being a potential possibility if Moore struggles again. We'll see. But that would be one move that would intrigue me. But I'm not just going to make moves just to make moves. It's got to be something that upgrades the team. That's the idea. You don't just bring in new guys just to bring in new guys. That kind of gets, that kind of throws all the team building that you've done to this point right out the window. So we'll see. It's going to be an interesting week here over the next few days. Obviously, cuts on Tuesday after that last preseason game on Sunday. We'll be bringing you all the news here on DKPittsburghSports.com. You can listen to all of our shows here on the network. Talking Pirates, talking Steelers, talking Penguins, Pitt, Penn State. Pitt, of course, open. They got a big one against West Virginia coming up here soon to open their season. That'll be a barn burner, well, or maybe a couch burner. We'll see. But that's going to do it for the Dale Lolley Show here today. I'll be back to talk to you again tomorrow.